Introduction to Raj Yoga, Session 2, in the context of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
And then I will make it available to others because I know a lot of people who would value it.
Yes, please do so.
Great. Okay, thank you. So what I would like us to do, as you say, we'll stick to the philosophical part and we'll go through the verses. And in many cases, the verses correspond exactly with the knowledge that is spoken in the context of Brahma Kumaris. And every so often, there's a big opposition. And I want to take up these oppositions specially and why they're so opposed and all of this. Because it's basically the difference between the Vedantic approach to spirituality and then this other approach, which I will call Brahma Kumari's approach, okay?
Okay.
So
but can you first in essence tell me what the difference is, just in essence, between the Kumari approach and the Vedanta approach?
Well, one difference is whether the soul is a separate individual or part of God. And so for us, the soul is a separate individual, God is a different individual. Secondly, there's a difference between matter and God.
Yeah.
So we have the souls, matter, and God, three things which are interfacing with each other. And that interface is where all the action takes place.
Yeah.
Then there are differences in the philosophy of karma.
Yeah.
And there'll be some incoherencies and inconsistencies that you find in this printed Gita, which is then clarified in a certain way. So what I thought we would do is just go through the verses which look at the philosophical part.
Okay.
And wherever there is everything the same, then fine, I will mention, okay, this is the same. And wherever it's different, then we'll go into discussion about how it's different, why it's different, and all that.
Yes. Good.
So I will use the translation that he has given. I'm using the translation by Winthrop Sargent. So it says, truly, there was never a time when I was not, nor you, nor these lords of men. And neither will there be a time when we shall cease to be from this time onward.
Yes.
Okay, now it also should say, talking about the past as well. So there's never been a time in the past when we haven't existed as individuals. Now, in this verse, it is God who is speaking, and according to the printed Gita, it is Krishna who's speaking. But here, of course, we're talking about incorporeal God, Shiva.
Yes.
And so definitely there's never been a time when Shiva did not exist, and also never been a time when you did not exist. So the soul does not precede or succeed God. God has always been there. We have always been there. Matter has always been there. But souls change over time, and matter changes over time. And the effect of time on both souls and matter is to cause deterioration.
And what do you mean by souls differ according to time? Because if there had never been a time when it was not, and there never will be a time when it's not, what is the difference then there? What do you mean by that?
There we go into the question of the time cycles.
For the Dwapar, Treta, you mean like that?
Exactly. So the time cycle, Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, Kali Yuga, according to us, that takes place over 5,000 years.
Yes.
Whereas according to conventional Hindu ideas, it's hundreds of thousands of years. And the conventional ideas say that there is an evolution going on. You are getting better and better and more close to nirvana and purity and so on. But if you look at the progression of Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, Kalyug, it's devolution, it's not evolution. So there you see an inconsistency right there, because from Satyug to Treta is a decline. And there is also, it is said that Satyuga is Solas Kala Sampuran, 16 celestial degrees complete. And then Treta, which is referring to Ram, is called Choda Kala, so 14 degrees. Then when you get to Dwapur, it's half, so it's 8 degrees. And when you get to Kalyug, it's like 2 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So that the decline is accelerating. So you can't have an accelerating decline and an evolution at the same time. It's opposed to each other. So it has to be one or the other. And so according to, I'm going to call it Gyan, what we use this word Gyan for what we are teaching.
Yes.
So according to Gyan, you arrive at the earliest as possible as the beginning of Satyuga. So there you are, Sola Kala Sampuran, you are the highest possible. And from there on, you decline. And so this is the change that happens in the soul. There is a decline because of time. Secondly, once you come to Dwapar Yuga, then you have the beginning of negative karma. So from Satyuga to the end of Treta Yuga, the decline is due to the effect of time, nothing else. But from Dwapar Yuga through to the end of Kali Yuga, you have an accelerating decline because of time, and you also have negative karma, which creates another degree of declining. So you change, and you also get distorted by all the complications of karma. And so that is basically what we can say for that verse.
Okay. But still, I have inconsistency in my mind.
Yes.
If you say there is a declination, or what is the word? If there is a decline in a time cycle, according to the cycles that we know, and here we see truly there was never a time when I was not, nor you, nor these lords. It seems, if I read this, that it has nothing to do with the time cycles. So
of course,
why?
yeah.
Okay.
Because in the Gita that is printed, they're not taking into consideration the time cycle.
Aha.
And this would be created by human beings, basically created by the Shankaracharya Mat. So they take something very, very ancient and they make it fit their philosophy. And because we have been studying with Shiv Baba, he will pick up tiny little things, little details in our study, which will draw our attention where you see inconsistencies, or you see something missing, or something is not taken into consideration.
Okay.
So in fact, Shiv Baba is not at any point impacted by time.
Yes, okay.
And the reason is because he doesn't take a body of his own. So we souls can only express ourselves through a body.
Yes.
Whereas, and when we are in nirvana, we cannot express ourselves, we cannot experience anything. It's like being a seed. Nothing's happening until you're planted and you get earth, water, sunshine. And then you grow into a plant, and the plant grows, gets some buds, makes some flowers, gets fertilized, makes some fruits, and then dies.
Yes.
And those seeds that it creates become the next one. So this is how nature works. And human beings consider themselves that way as well, because they reproduce and then you have descendants and so on. But they do not really track themselves or track each other, because you can't.
Okay.
Whereas Shiv Baba can track us and does track us.
Yes.
And so we start thinking about things differently, because he says, look at everything from my angle and you will see it differently from when you're looking at it from your angle. And then you can evaluate what I'm telling you and decide
Yes.
what's real and what's right.
Okay.
So in this verse, he's talking all about time. And this is, of course, because in Vedanta, they say God is everything, everywhere, and so it's all one thing. Time, no time, nirvana, sakar, akar, everything is all. And so God would never really say there's never a time when I don't exist. He'll say there's never a time when you don't exist. But for himself, he will say, I am eternal and immortal, beyond time.
Yes.
And when we can catch these little things, it helps us in our meditation, because in meditation, you need to try to grasp who is God and what is God. And so you need information. You get these tiny little things that, for example, when you want to think about God as eternal and immortal, and you look at this verse and you see that he is a being who doesn't really think of himself in the context of time, but he's communicating to people who think about themselves in the context of time.
Yeah. Yes.
That is interesting.
Interesting. Yes. Otherwise, we wouldn't understand, I think.
Yeah. Okay, now this next part is quite a famous verse. That's the verse number 13. Just as in the body, childhood, adulthood, and old age happen to an embodied being. So also he, the embodied being, acquires another body. So you leave one body and take another. And it says the wise one is not deluded about this. And every so often, this expression, the wise one is not deluded. Now, this word delusion refers to Maya, and Maya refers to sense perception. So a person who experiences reality only through the five senses cannot see where the soul goes. So they make assumptions about it, and they say the soul's gone, maybe gone to nirvana, maybe reincarnated, but they don't know because they cannot perceive it. You see. The Sanskrit for delusion is muhyati, and I don't know that word really.
Muhyati. Mu. Deluded, he's confused. Muhyati. Yes, I see it.
Yeah.
No, I don't know the word either.
So we'll let it be. But basically, we have no issue with that one.
No.
Then the next one, 14. Physical sensations, truly, Arjuna, causing cold, heat, pleasure, or pain, come and go and are impermanent, so manage to endure them, Arjuna. So this one corresponds very much to some of the practices that people do in bhakti, in the form of austerities. So they
Mm.
expose themselves to great cold and heat and try to make themselves pretty much immune to the inability to endure the extremes. But that is done on a physical level.
Yeah. Yes.
So in Gyan, what we are told is don't be too sensitive to these things, because while it's a good idea to have some heating and cooling and, warm clothes and cool clothes and all of that, because we are in the end of Kali Yuga, there will be many situations where we do have to endure these things because facilities are not available.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we are encouraged to practice to not be too dependent on facilities.
Okay. I understood this differently. This is nice, your explanation. I thought it is meant for the sensory level, which is impermanent all the time, and we give so many attachment to the sensory level. But this is more than that. It is more like the experiencing of all the cold, heat, etc. as you are. Yes.
Well, yes, it is. And then, pleasure and pain, it's not like, this word pleasure and pain, these are almost like emotions. Because you may have some physical pain or psychological pain or financial pain or social pain or lots of different things. And so we need to develop a certain a degree of detachment so that we are not able to be manipulated by, people applying good and not so good things to us. And if you look at some of the, the reward and punishment ideas,
Yes.
and it's connected with that, you see. And so in our teachings, we would say we use this word drama. Again, we come to the world cycle. And in Gyan, it is not just a time cycle, but it's also a cycle of a story. There's a story, the human story. Everybody has their own story. And then there's an overall big human historical story.
Yes.
And in that story, there are good days and bad days and victory and defeat and all of that, which comes again a little bit later in the Gita. But this is introducing the idea that everything is up and down and good and bad. And what we need to develop is a kind of not exactly indifference to it, but that we cannot be controlled by anyone applying reward and punishment, because this corrupts people.
Yes.
And the idea of studying the Gita is to become free. And what happens to people who are in the pursuit of power, because the Gita is all about becoming a king.
Yes.
So if you're a king, you're in a position of absolute power. And so there are a lot of people who do this because they want power.
Yes.
Then they assume that everybody else wants power too. And it becomes very, very competitive. And so people who are in positions of power, they control people by reward and punishment.
Yes.
And then you look at yourself in the social context. And so in the social context, you have all kinds of social taboos and social laws and social requirements, which is again the same thing, trying to make people behave a certain way through reward and punishment. And as a king, you have to be free and independent so that nobody can mess you around by applying reward and punishment. So that's really the part that's interesting. And then if you manage to endure them, that means you don't have a price. Nobody can buy you. Nobody can kill you because you know your immortality. Nobody can threaten you with torture and death and stuff like that. And
can I ask a question in between?
Oh yeah.
Because it was interesting the way you started it. You also named it is about detachment.
Yes.
And that is easily said and not that easily done.
No.
As we come in life with a lot of attachments, and our forming and the way we are educated, everything is attachment, attachment, and attachment. So how to instruct to be detached? What is the clue there?
Well, again, it's to do with dependence. Okay, you say, okay, I'm attached to my mother and father and sisters and brothers. So that's because you grew up with them, you trust them, you're familiar with them, you know them, they know you, they nourish you. So your relationship with them is much tighter than your relationship with people who are not your immediate family. And so that is given the name attachment. So the word attachment tends to be given to a huge spectrum of things. And I personally feel that it's quite good to divide the spectrum into sections.
Okay.
Because if you say to yourself, okay, I want to be detached from everything and everyone and you end up being psychologically dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. Because then people confuse the word detachment with the word dissociation.
Yes.
And a lot of people who study these things, they practice to be dissociated, which creates psychological dysfunctionality.
Yes.
And it's not healthy. And that's not what this is talking about. And so we need to be very particular about where we have an attachment that is toxic and where we have an attachment which is going to cause us to be easily manipulated, you see, and where we have an attachment which is an addiction. And so there's a difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships. And this distinction is not covered in the word attachment, which is a catch-all for everything, you see. And so we will encounter the word attachment and detachment a lot. And you will find within the community of Brahma Kumaris, there are some people who understand it quite a healthy way, and some people who really don't. See, so not everybody gets it. So you use the vocabulary, but doesn't mean you get it.
Yes, I understand. The word and the meaning are two different things.
Yeah. So the point about it is not really that they're impermanent. The point about it is that, I mean, in a sense, it's quite an important word, but one of the things that I was taught is that, you may be in a situation that is particularly challenging and trying, and it may last for a long time. But there's another part of the Gita which says that circumstances arise, persist for some time, and then they fade away. And so there is a spiritual law behind this, which is really very important, I think. And that is that we who are stuck in time tend to think that if something is happening over a long period of time, it's unendurable, because your ability to endure difficulties for a short period of time runs out when the difficulty lasts longer than your ability to endure it for that particular short period of time. So something that comes up quite often in the Gita is that, don't give up, and try to be sort of in a state of equanimity about things longer than you think you can, because your inability to endure them for a long time is an indication that you are spiritually weaker than you need to be. And of course, everybody in Kali Yuga is completely spiritually depleted.
Yes.
Because we've passed through the whole cycle of time and we've run out of our spiritual energy, because there is this decline. And so the time when you need to study these things and practice meditation is at the time when you're empty.
Yes.
And so this is the time in between the end of Kali Yuga and the beginning of Satyuga, which we call Sangam Yuga. So Sangam is the confluence. So during this period of a confluence, which kind of overlaps, so part of you is still in Kali Yuga and part of you is getting ready to go to Satyuga, and you flip-flop between them depending on the day, depending on the circumstances, and so many things. And so this is like a recommendation that says your problem is really that you're in the process of reacquiring your spiritual strength, but you haven't got it yet. So you may find things a little hard to handle, but just kind of push yourself a little bit, not too extreme, just a little bit, because gradually you are building up your strength. And the indicator of your building up is that you can handle things longer than you used to be able to, like that.
Yes, I can understand. Yes.
Do you have any other question before we go to 15?
Well, it a lot of my radars are working while you are saying this. Like I experience it directly, that it is like that. Yes. Maybe I have one question.
Yes.
If you're talking about, I have been reading and listening to a lot of other lectures in my life before. So when you say you are in the Sangam Yuga,
Yes.
in between the Kali Yuga and the Sat Yuga, I ask myself, is it really the time cycle of days or hours, or is it in between one day when I'm in my dreamless deep sleep state and coming up again with all my drama, or going into my source of life? I don't know. What do you mean by the Sangam Yuga exactly?
Okay, if we say their time cycle is 5,000 years, that's a fixed number of years. And if we say that each yuga is 1,250 years, that's a fixed number of time. And so we would say that, okay, Satyuga was 5,000 years ago from today. Everybody else will say, no, 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 it wasn't. So that's one big area of difference. Now, for example, Shankaracharya came incarnated, according to the historians, in the end of the 7th century.
Yes.
Now, according to the Vedantic gurus and everything, he incarnated 5,000 years ago.
Hmm.
So this is because they want to prove that what they're saying, which started with him, happened from that time. And what they did was to change all the Indian scriptures and kind of delete them and rewrite them in Sanskrit, because, of course, a lot of it was lost one way or the other. It used to be just spoken. And so they could manage to do that. And of course, they did it also with the Gita. And they didn't do it in a very underhanded way, because wherever they make huge, weird inconsistencies, it's so obvious how they changed it and what they changed it that it's easy to pinpoint.
Okay.
But you see, Sangam is the period in between two time cycles.
Every in between two time cycles. Yes.
Yes. And so what we're saying is the Sangam Yuga is a period of more or less somewhere like 100 years. And it may be a little more than 100 years, but, you know, the people like round figures. So this study that I'm telling you about began with Shiv Baba landing in the body of a man who he renamed Brahma, but otherwise his name was Lekraj Kirpalani. And that happened in somewhere around the region of 1935, 36, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Nobody knows exactly when, because you can't have a horoscope for God.
No.
And so he said, you know, this is the end of Kali Yuga, and I'm here and I'm giving you the original knowledge of the Gita, because it's now time to go to Satyuga. And the result of the Gita is you become the deity king.
Yeah.
And so that is Narayan, Lakshmi and Narayan. These are the first emperor and empress of the Golden Age. And when they were children, they were called Radha and Krishna. And when they got married, they changed their name, and Lakshmi and Narayan is their title.
Okay.
And so therefore, Krishna is the result of the Gita, not the cause of the Gita. And so the cause of the Gita would be Shiva, who is incorporeal God, but who is not Shankar. So otherwise, very often you will hear that Shiva and Shankar is one and the same. And so he says there is the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, Shankar. But the Trimurti is an icon that refers to the acts of God. And so it is a metaphor. And the figures of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shankar are symbolic of a threefold process of transformation or metamorphosis in the soul. So as a Brahma, you have to live a Brahman life, pure life. As a Brahma, you have a simple life. And you are studying. So your accumulation of information in a life of simplicity is represented by Brahma.
Okay, yes.
And then Shankar refers to the bodiless stage. So this is a reference to yoga. Because in yoga, you practice to be detached from the body and return to the state of being the soul alone in the original condition, which is in nirvana. And so that refers to the destruction of everything that happened during the time cycle, the accumulation of this and that. And so that's also Brahma is called the time of creation. You're studying, you're learning, you're getting created. With yoga, destruction, all of whatever doesn't belong, any impurities or whatever is all purged away. That's called destruction.
Yes.
Then the result of that combined work of destruction and construction is you get Vishnu, which is sustenance.
Yes.
And sustenance means that the work that you do in your spiritual practice over a long period of time is so powerful that it persists for the next period of Satyuga and Treta Yuga, where you are a yogi for all of that time, a yogi in the sense of not a bhogi.
Hmm.
Do you see what I mean? And so this is referenced by Vishnu. Now, in conventional Hinduism, they say Brahma is the creator, Shankara is a destroyer, and Vishnu is a sustainer. So, like, they're three different people. But actually, they're three different aspects of one person.
Yes. Yes.
And the one person is not God, the one person is a human being. You see, because God acts on the human being, and then the human being acts on the world. And the human being that God acts on is the highest of all the humans, the leaders.
Yes.
But by the time you're in the Kali Yuga, you're not a leader, you're just a basic everybody like anybody else. You don't know who you are, you're just going along like a normal person. But once you start to learn these things, you find that you're not the same as everybody else, there's differences. And that you're gradually accumulating your spiritual power and your wisdom. And you realize that God is actually preparing you for a position of substantial leadership. And so what you do in your spiritual practice is a preparation for that.
Yes.
That's why it's like that.
Okay.
And that's why it happens in the confluence age.
Okay.
You do all of these things just in one life, whereas your bhakti is in many, many lives.
Yes.
So if we go to 15, indeed, the man whom these sensations do not afflict, O Arjuna, the wise one, to whom happiness and unhappiness are the same, is ready for immortality. This is quite a significant verse.
Yes.
Which needs to be looked at. So these sensations is basically the flip-flop between positive and negative. Our perception, sense perception, is about people, places, and objects. And so if we like something, we feel good. If we don't like something, we feel bad, and.
Likes and dislikes, yes.
Yeah. Now, he says happiness and unhappiness are the same. What it means is not that happiness and unhappiness are the same, but it means that you're not under the influence of happiness or unhappiness, but you're under the influence of who you are.
Yes.
And so it's talking about a person who's free. And so this is called the wise person. So obviously a wise person has a lot of importance for freedom. And freedom is connected with karma. Because when you do a negative karma, you come in bondage. When you do a positive karma with a person, a place, or a thing, but mostly a person, you still come in bondage, but it's not a bondage that causes you pain, but you're still not free. So there are attractions and repulsions. And so if you want to be free, then you would also be free from attractions and repulsions. Now, why people get attracted or repulsed is because of something or another they want. When a person is spiritually depleted, they want power. And so sometimes they will be attracted to someone who gives them something that they don't have.
Yes.
You see, and when you go for that, then you're caught, you're in bondage. And you don't like people who disturb you in one way or the other because of something that you don't like. And so then you do a karma with them, which puts you in bondage with them. So in order to be free, you get the point that there isn't anything that any human being can really give you or take away from you. But your karma starts to be karma between yourself, the soul, and God, the Supreme Soul. And that will make you free.
So that is also in a way of the state of the equanimity, what you told before.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And so immortality, anyway, you're already immortal. So this expression is ready for immortality has to do with the idea of really developing yourself spiritually, because the purpose of spiritual practice is to grasp your immortality and pass through the various tests and understand the karma and. So that's what that expression is about.
So I was wondering one thing when we ended the last session.
Yes.
And now it comes up again. I see that you have when you take another body, another life, you have to go through this process every time again. The knowing of the immortality, the equanimity. Is it every time the same cycle you are going through, or do you take in your spirit, in your soul, some of this knowledge along? What is your, why every time we have to go through it again and again? What is it that we do not do right here?
Well, there's several things. One thing is there's an expression, Gyan Bhakti Vairagya. Have you heard this expression?
Yes.
So Gyan Bhakti Vairagya refers to different situations during the time cycle. So during Golden Age and Silver Age, Satyuga and Treta Yuga, that's called the time of Gyan, although you don't have Gyan, but you have the effect of Gyan.
Yes.
And then the Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga is the time of Bhakti. And that's the time when you are trying to become free and trying to get salvation, but actually you decline because the information that you have access to is either incorrect or incomplete or misleading. But whatever you do with good intention doesn't work out. And you get in more and more bondage until you get to the confluence age, the Sangam Yuga, where you get Vairagya from Bhakti. And Vairagya is basically a very deep understanding that all of this, which, presents itself as the path to spirituality, is actually not. And none of it is, because it's so gross and it's so physical and ritualistic and it's full of contradictions and so you kind of you want the real juice, you want the real stuff. And so you get a vairagya from all the efforts that you had made, which were eventually fruitless. And so this time of vairagya is the time when you get knowledge directly from God, and therefore you can get success by applying it because of who it comes from. but you are surrounded by all kinds of things that want to take you away from it. So you have to be quite determined and quite focused, and then you're okay. But every time you get a new life, you don't start all over again with this. This happens only in your last life in the cycle. You see. And this is why the knowledge of the Gita is given at the end, not halfway through.
So would you say then that every soul is in the same cycle, in the same moment, the same place in the cycle? Every soul we have now here, is that different, or is because the life cycle is going on anyway?
Yeah, it is, but that's in a biological sense. And, different souls have different number of births.
Yes.
So the maximum you could have is 84 in the 5,000-year cycle, and the minimum is 1. And then within all those births, there are different statuses.
Okay.
And the status goes all the way from the king to the chamal, And so who are you, you see? This question, very deep question to ask yourself. Who are you as an individual who has many, many births? What caliber of human being are you in your essence, you see? And that is very different for each one. And so when a person has exposure to God directly and his knowledge and so on, how you deal with it, how you grasp it, and so on, acts like a kind of mirror to yourself and to others to indicate who you are. And it becomes gradually clear, gradually.
Okay.
That's interesting, huh?
Well, and interesting is also, what do you say about the souls of non-human beings then?
The souls of non-human beings are, in a way, you could say, in the service of humanity. But then humanity has a responsibility to take care of them. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. But it's only the human souls who are capable of grasping this.
Yes, that I understand.
And the others, they act according to their nature. But one of the problems, human beings in Kali Yuga, they're destroying nature and they're abusing the animals and the insects. And so that's also big negative karma for which they will have to pay. So, for example, a deity is called Ahimsa Paramo Dharma. And so ahimsa means you take care not only of cows or whatever it is, all of them. They have a right to be. You don't have to eat them. You don't have to abuse them.
Yes.
But at the same time, you can't be a Jain because it's so impractical. And you're worrying about all the bugs and everything.
Yes.
So you have to be balanced and manage things in a manageable way. It has to be practical,
Yes. Okay.
So the 16 is a pretty interesting one, the next one. It is found that the unreal has no being. It is found that there is no non-being of the real. Now, this is normally a completely impossible thing to understand. If you go to the if you go to the Sanskrit, you'll find it makes more sense. So there is this word sat and asat. So
Yes.
one of the definitions of God is Sat Chit Ananda.
Yes.
You see, and the definition of a human being is Sat and Chit, but not Ananda.
Yes.
Matter is Sat, but not Chit.
Yes.
And so, but in Vedanta, everything is all one thing. So they equate sat with existing. And Shiv Baba says, no, it's different. You cannot translate sat with the word existent. But he has translated it as real. Now, in Hindu philosophy, what they say is anything which is unchanging is real. But Shiv Baba says, no, that's not going to work for you, because the soul is real and it changes. Because it never can be destroyed, but it does change. And so the Vedantic people, they do not know that the soul changes, because they think the soul is part of God and God doesn't change. Therefore, the soul doesn't change. This is faulty logic, because the premise is wrong. The soul is not part of God. The soul is separate.
So in this understanding, is the soul real or unreal?
Real.
Okay.
The soul is real. You and I are real souls, but our bodies are not real insofar as they will die and then go back to earth, dust to dust, and all of that.
Yes.
And so therefore we'd have to work with this verse a little differently.
The first sentence, it is found that the unreal has no being.
Okay, what that means is something which is material doesn't have consciousness.
Aha.
So your body cannot think or take decisions
without the soul in it.
Absolutely. But, because the soul is in the body and there's a lot of connection with the subtle body, you see, they're not really here dealing with the subtle body, but in Gyan, we also deal with the subtle body.
Yes.
So what it means is that matter is real, but it doesn't have consciousness. And so it's called non-existent because it changes visibly. But we wouldn't say that it's non-existent because, as Einstein said, matter can be neither created nor destroyed, right?
Yes.
And so matter is sat as well. But the particular body that you're in, that is not permanent, but all the bits, the components, the air, earth, fire, water, and ether, that's permanent. So this verse is cause for thought. We have to really think about it.
Yes. I'm reading it again and again, and I think it sounds contradiction, but that there is no contradiction. It is only, it's found that the unreal has no being. It's found that there is no non-being of the real.
So that's because how do you put it, really? Because it's a double negative. But if you are real, then you're real. You're for real, and you can't not be real. And that's really one way of putting it. So it is certain. Both of these things are certain. That is that it's not exactly certain the way they have put it, but matter itself is real, but the different configurations in matter, they change, but then you see the soul changes as well.
Yes.
So matter is real, but the configurations vary from moment to moment. And the soul is real, but it's in the context of change. So because of the Vedantic system believes in Advait, right? Advait Vedanta means everything is all one thing.
Yes.
And everything is God. And you have the physical and the non-physical, and it's all one thing, and nobody can think about it, because if everything is all one thing, then nothing happens, right? There's no interaction. So it really doesn't work. However, it was imposed on on people, and it found its way into all the different religions. And so then Shiv Baba comes along and he says, no, 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 you haven't understood. You partially understood, but no, you need proper information. And so he comes along and says, okay, that's that Gita, but it's been messed up. And I have come to tell you the original information of the Gita so that you can understand clearly what you are and who you are, and what am I and who am I, and how you can have yoga. Because when you have yoga between the soul and the Supreme Soul, then you can take power and you can get purified.
Yes.
And then you can return to your original condition. And that is what you want.
Yes.
And so and that's called Sadgati.
Sadgati.
Right.
Okay, I never heard of that. Sadgati.
The Sadgati, normally they translate Sadgati as salvation, but different religions have different meaning of salvation. But Sadgati means you arrive at the right destination.
Okay.
And so the right destination, actually, there are two destinations. One destination is called Gati, and one destination is called Sadgati. So Gati refers to a return to the world of nirvana, because when the cycle finishes, all the souls leave their bodies together, and the cycle of reincarnation takes a pause. Everyone returns to nirvana, goes back to a blank sheet of paper, as it were.
Yes.
And then Sadgati is when you immediately come to the beginning of Satyuga, and you arrive in the golden era in the form of a king or queen, and you are at the top of any possible human achievement. That's called Sadgati.
Okay.
And so that's what this is all about.
Yes.
And it's amazing because it's much, much higher than we aspired to. But he says, no, think high, aim high.
Aim high, yes.
Yeah. So it says here, the certainty of both these propositions is indeed surely seen by the perceivers of truth. And that's a very interesting statement, because what is a perceiver of truth? The Darsibis, it says, the perceivers of truth, the discerners, the knowers.
Darshibhis. Is it Hindi? Let me check the Hindi one. Darshibhi. Darshibhi. Can you also read the Hindi?
Yes.
Yes, and then it is Darshib, because it has two E's. Yes, Darshibhi. Yes. Okay.
So he translates Darshibi as a perceiver, the seers. So what that means is basically people who can see with the third eye.
Yes, okay.
So darshan is to see. And so you have darshan, you know this word darshan?
Yes.
And so if you want to have a darshan of God or darshan of truth, then you may be a darshibi perhaps.
And that's the perceiver of truth, yes.
It may be that. So if you have the third eye, that means you can see with the senses whatever's physical, and with the third eye you see whatever is non-physical. That means you can see God, you can see the soul, and you can see the totality of all the changes which is in the cycle.
Yes.
Okay. And so then you could see that the difference between matter, the souls, and God, and how God remains stable, no change. And there's an expression in Christianity for God, a particular word which means unchanging. And so a human soul changes, matter changes, but all of the changes are contained within the cycle. And you remember when we were talking about Dvait and Advait right at the beginning. So this is referring to that. So when you can see God is permanent, fixed, immutable, the word is immutable, non-changing. And a human soul mutates because it goes from pure to impure. Matter mutates, it also goes from pure to impure, the quality of matter itself, but also it keeps on changing form and configuration because all material things are made of these elements of matter. Something which is just inert matter doesn't have consciousness. So where it says no being, it refers to consciousness. And the conscious, the soul, can never not be.
No.
Right? And so what it's saying is if you're a soul, you're real and you cannot not be. And that's not the same as matter.
Yes.
So it's really distinguishing that, but it's a big contradiction because it's the opposite of the Vedantic concepts. And this is what you find in the Gita, tons and tons of contradictions.
Especially as we read in 3 verses earlier about the permanent and the impermanent.
Yes.
Then it is also a contradiction in this way.
Yes.
It is changing and unchanging. If you look at the 224, which we had about last time, also about the how do you say what is the quality of the soul. Yes, there. So
You're talking about the soul in 224.
Yes.
And it's full of contradiction, yeah?
Yes. 224 says soul cannot be cut, born. What was it, burned? And
right.
then
it says it's all pervading.
Yes.
And that's a complete contradiction.
Cannot be pierced, burned, wetted or withered, eternal, all pervading, fixed, unmoving,
and primeval. And so you see, it cannot be pierced, okay, burned, okay, wetted or withered, okay, it's eternal, okay, all pervading, no, it's not. And fixed, it's not fixed, it's changing. And it's not unmoving, and it is primeval. You see, so some of it's right and some of it's wrong.
So that is a contradiction which I see now then.
Yeah. And so I think it's very interesting to discover these contradictions and to apply the information that Shiv Baba gives us so that you can think about it with clarity. Then you can meditate on it. And then you get...
But I am wondering one thing, sister, if I may. Does it matter that it is that the difference of the philosophies? Because I didn't study, but I read about the 6 schools of philosophy.
Yeah.
And then you have the Dvait and the other ones also. But if you particularly focus on these 2, I was wondering, does it really matter, the difference, like we are reading it? Does it really matter for your understanding? Or if you are fixed, and if you are really like the verse before said, indeed to the man who has no, which was it, to 15 or earlier? I read it. You just said it.
The one ready for immortality, you mean? 15?
Yes.
Okay, ready for immortality, but then that's just the first step. And then you have to take a journey. And if you have your GPS giving you the wrong information, you will not arrive at the destination you want. And so your destination, we talked about a little bit before, Gati and Sadgati.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to go to nirvana, then you have to know the philosophy of karma correctly.
Yes.
You have to become karmatit. And you can't become karmatit because you have a lot of weight of negative karma. You don't know how to get rid of it.
I understand that one. And then still I'm reading 12, I think. When
Okay.
there truly was never a time that I was not, and
Yes.
that we were not, that no one was not,
Yes.
and then neither will there be a time when we shall cease to be. So
So that's
then
okay. There's nothing to argue about there.
no. Yes.
And so if you say, okay, I have always existed, but then you need details. What is I? What's the difference between I and you? Is it are we the one and the same? Are we part of God or not? And so there you have a lot of differences in what different people say.
Okay.
And
Yes.
so if you want to understand clearly, then you have questions that arise as more information comes, and the information has to be consistent, self-consistent.
That it is. That's what I'm wondering here. Yes.
Yeah. And so why I'm doing this in this way is to basically show you all the various inconsistencies and so on that are there. Then we have to look at the Gyan by itself and see whether it is self-consistent or not.
Yes. Okay.
And what I'm trying to do is to sort of show you both of them at the same time. And we see how we go, because I haven't really taught this in this way to anybody else. I teach it to myself in this way. But and we'll see how we go.
Yes, of course. Of course. But these questions come rising up, and then I just put them. I don't want to go to sleep with them. We
No,
are now
it's
in
so important.
conversation.
It's so important because then
Yeah.
everything is covered and we don't let go of anything, which is really good.
Yes. Okay.
It takes how long it takes.
Yes.
So a perceiver of truth, you see, who can perceive truth? And there, you see, truth, sat means what's real. So you've got a little bit of circular information going on here, because if you can see the truth, then you can see that unreal has no being and there's no non-being of the real. So it's like a circular logic going on there. And this is also very relevant because when something is self-consistent, then you can reach the same conclusion by analyzing it from any angle. And also because all of these things are circular. Bless you.
Thank you.
They're very circular. And so the system of thought that Shiv Baba is teaching us is that you start off at any point and you look at that point of information from all angles, and you arrive at the point of departure, which means you have gone all the way around it and you've thought it through. Because these ideas are like something permanent, and you can't see them until you've analyzed them, and that they have stood the test of your analysis, your deconstruction, if you like.
You have to peel it all the way.
All the way, yeah. Then you find out whether it stands up to scrutiny, you see.
And you feel it like a resonance in yourself.
Yes.
Is it the right English word?
Yeah, the resonance.
The resonance in yourself. You feel when it keeps on hitting, or the resonance is okay. You feel it exactly.
That's called the ring of truth.
Yes.
And when you have got that, you feel satisfied.
Hmm.
You see, and that's the signal that, yeah, you've got something, you put your finger on it, because these
Yes.
are so subtle. Ideas are not objects.
Yes.
And
True.
there's
And
you
then you can proceed. After that, you can make
yes,
the next step.
yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Hmm.
So it's
Yes.
pretty amazing.
Really. It's like I said, this is a real candy bar.
Ah, okay. Well, we'll take a look at 17.
Yes.
It says, know that by which all this universe is pervaded is indeed indestructible. No one is able to accomplish the destruction of the imperishable.
Hmm.
Is the Vedic idea absolutely in this?
Yes.
You see,
Yes.
because when,
Pervading, all pervading is also here.
yes, yeah. So when he's talking about the universe, well, that's physical,
Hmm.
you see. And so that's only a part of
Matter.
reality because not all of reality is the universe.
It is a matter, material.
Yeah. You
Hmm.
see, he uses the word sarva. Sarva means everything.
Yes. Sarva. Hmm.
So he says, okay, everything is the material universe. It's like, excuse me, no, that's not true. That's the material universe, but then there's other
Hmm.
things that are not. And okay, it is true that you cannot destroy matter,
Hmm.
but it is not true that there is nothing else other than matter.
But this, as I understand this, he says here as well that because you are the soul that is everlasting. So know that by which all this universe is pervaded is indeed indestructible.
Yes.
No one is able to accomplish the destruction of the imperishable. The imperishable is the soul.
Well,
The
it's the soul,
imperishable,
but also it's the totality, and also it's God. So basically,
yes.
what it's saying is that the soul and God and matter are all one and the same thing. And Sheet Baba is saying, no, no, no.
Mhm.
You see.
Okay, that I didn't understand here, but okay.
Mm. So that by which all this universe is
Yes.
pervaded. So what is that? You see, it's not the
Hmm.
soul. The soul does not pervade the universe.
No.
The universe is the universe.
Yes.
God does not pervade the universe. The soul does not pervade the universe. The universe is pervaded by matter: air, earth, fire, water, and ether.
Hmm. Yes.
So that's all
Exactly.
matter. And it's not the soul and it's not God. And okay, nobody can destroy matter.
Yes.
But then it assumes that there is something other than the
Hmm.
universe. And there you have another self contradiction.
Yes.
Because if the universe is pervaded by matter,
Hmm.
then it means that you who seek to destroy it or whatever are something other than the universe.
Hmm.
You see, so there they are open to challenge.
I'm looking at, I have another Bhagavad Gita here
Hmm.
on my bench, and I'm looking of it is from Paramhans Yoganand,
Yes.
and he has this verse. And here it says, 217, know as imperishable the one by whom everything has been manifested and pervaded. No one has power to bring about the annihilation of this unchangeable spirit.
Oh, that's a very interesting translation. And
Yes, it
yeah,
is.
very different.
It's quite different than it is said. It says here. going to put on my glasses as well because the letters are very small.
That's right, yeah. So Avinashi is indestructible,
Yes,
and Vidhi is some kind of method.
Avinashi, yes.
Yes, Avinashi and Vidhi, you
Yes.
don't have any Vidhi to destroy the totality,
Mhm.
which is Avinashi. And in the Sanskrit, it doesn't really indicate that there is a one.
Mhm.
Like in the Paramahansas, you would say that the one he's talking about is God, right?
Yes, because it is written with capital words.
Oh, okay, yeah. But then
No,
he
yes,
can't
the
really
one.
define God.
Because in the sentence after that, it's about spirit. It's the one. Know as imperishable the one by whom everything has been manifested and pervaded. No one, and that is the small one, capital one, no one has power to bring about the annihilation of the unchangeable spirit. So
Mm,
there are capitals again.
yes. And then the
Okay.
conclusion of that is therefore go out and fight, which
Exactly.
doesn't follow at all.
No.
But you see how he's trying to connect it to the packaging.
Yes.
But at the same time, you see, what Paramahansa is doing is he's saying, okay, there's a self, a little s, which is you,
Mhm.
and a big S,
Yes.
but it's not necessarily clarifying it. Here,
No.
I think it's if we look at 18, these bodies inhabited by the eternal, the indestructible, and the immeasurable embodied self, are saying
Yeah.
that every soul is part of God,
Hmm.
which is not true. Because if every soul is part of God, they have to behave according to how God behaves, which they don't.
Hmm.
And then they say, well, they anthropomorphize God. They make God as a human being, but actually God is a non-human being,
Hmm.
and so behaves differently. So what are
So
they?
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Um, we have different souls, we have different bodies, we have different minds,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
These keep on changing. When the soul leaves the body,
Mm.
how does your soul differ from my soul when we both don't have the body?
Well, we will take a new body. We keep the same mind because the mind is in the soul. And we also have our karma. So we have our destiny. So we're individual souls who leave one body and take another body according to their karma. So my karma is different from your karma. And so it's like you have a big wardrobe with your set of bodies, and you go from one to the other until you've used them all up, and then you start again.
Hmm.
And each one has their own sets of bodies.
So would you say that your karma is a part of your soul?
Well, your karma is what your soul does. And the law of karma is that it's like very often karma and sanskaras are equated.
Hmm.
And sanskaras are part of the soul. In a way, your karma is your actions, your choices, which you do according to who you are, which is your sanskaras. And so when you're,
Interesting. That's very interesting. I have to write something down. I'm sorry.
oh,
If I
please
don't
go
write it
ahead.
down, I will.
Absolutely go ahead.
Can you say it again?
I don't know.
Karma,
Unfortunately, we
kar-
recorded it.
karma, about the karma and the sanskaras.
Okay, karma and sanskaras are very often equated. So your sanskaras are part of your soul. Now, each soul has its own destiny, its own story. So your karma, your sanskara, and your destiny are, in a sense, you. And so, yet at the same time, you choose each karma that you do, and you have to suffer the consequences or take the benefit of each negative or positive karma you do.
Sorry, my phone is going down. I'm going to have to put it on my sorry.
That's okay.
It has to get electricity now because it's going down. My telephone is yes, it is good now.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're beginning to catch some of these paradoxes that are part of all this. Because you have free will, you do what you want, you think what you want, but at the same time, you will not do something that's against your nature. You do, even if you would do everything all over again, you do it the same way because that's who you are.
Mm.
So it's paradoxical because you you are obliged to be who you are by your destiny, but yet you create your destiny. So it is said, Bani Banaya.
Mm.
It is.
Yes, Bani Banaya, and also is that also the part of the Prarabdha karma you are talking about now?
It's part of it because, you are responsible, but at the same time, you have no choice. And you have to straddle this little blade, in between what is your choice and what you're responsible for, and what is fixed in your destiny, which is who you are. And then you have to come to terms with everything and then
Mm.
kind of let go of everything.
Yes.
And
Mm.
see, when you're spiritually empowered, how you operate corresponds to your perfect pure state. And when you are disempowered, you behave in opposition to the reality of yourself. And so the most important thing once we start knowing this is to make sure that we take power.
Mm.
Because when we take power, then we can be consistent and coherent with our essential self. Otherwise, we become the opposite of ourselves. But then the existence is made up of the pairs of opposites. And then we have to be equanimous about them.
Yes.
It's
What a difficult word, equanimity.
yeah.
Yes, it's a nice word. Yes. Okay. Interesting. Hmm.
So it's quite an interesting kind of final point of the ideas. These bodies inhabited by the eternal, the indestructible, the immeasurable, the embodied self. That means the soul, but they shouldn't put a big S
Yes.
because it's
Hmm.
not God. God does not inhabit these bodies. These bodies are inhabited by individual souls, and they do come to an end. Whether you kill somebody or you don't kill them, they will die anyway.
Mm.
Um,
Therefore, fight.
it
Yes.
will fight. But you see, when you look at really the depth of the philosophy of karma, it doesn't really stand up. But what's the important is not that he fights, but he goes through the motions
Hmm.
of doing what needs to be done because of the proper response to other person's improper action.
Yes,
So
and
that's
because of his dharma, he has to do it
he
because
has
it's
to
his
do it.
it's his
Yeah,
duty.
his duty. And
Hmm.
so that's the whole thing. So this is actually a very good point to conclude our session today, because after this comes a different set of ideas. But it's very, very fascinating, isn't it?
Very fascinating.
Mm.
Very.
And so then to meditate on these things, and sort of sit with it so that you have this equanimity in spite of all these contradictions that are implied by you have to do what you have to do, but you can't, and you have to, and you can't, and you have to.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
And
then,
yes.
okay.
No, and these days my meditation is on that as well, and my questions also. I have like some sadness in me because the year is coming that the complete process about my husband's
Yes,
having to leave and everything, his bodily pains and his really intense situation. So there is so much sadness in myself that comes up again. And
yes.
then I'm wondering and meditating on what is that? Where does it come from? Where does it go?
Well,
Why is it why is it some days so like this and some day like this? It is so physical in one way and in the other way so mental and so exhausting. And then not really grasping from where is my influence here, you know?
well, because you have a deep connection with him. And
Yes.
most likely, your life with him in this life is not the only time you've been together. And so, there are many things. There's a letting go that has to happen, which is connected with the detachment and attachment. See, one thing is attachment to the body,
Hmm.
and another thing is attachment to the soul.
Hmm.
And attachment to the body brings up the sadness, because the sign of attachment is this feeling of loss.
Hmm.
But, the soul relationship is eternal anyway.
And may I be frank and honest?
Mm.
I don't feel like that I'm attached to him, but I have some sadness about the way he had to leave, about his pains, his intense situation he had to go through before being able to leave. That is my biggest pain here. His pain is still my pain, and not him not being here anymore in his body.
Yeah.
I don't feel the attachment to that. I feel the attachment to his pains.
Do you feel that you should have been able to relieve it or something like that?
No, no, not like that, because I'm not responsible for that. I don't feel responsibility for his path, but I cannot imagine. I know in how much pain and how much difficulties physically he had, and in a way that struck me really that much, that he had to go through so many
Yes.
physical situations that were so hard, and that I had to see it every day,
Yeah.
him going through that, and that is my struggle.
Right. This is kind of like an empathy,
Yes.
and you have to see it. And when you have to see something and experience someone else's pain, that is a very big, like a very big test.
Very big.
It's like it's happening to you.
Like there, I couldn't give him relief. He had to go through it by himself. He was lonely in that process.
But you
No
accompanied,
one can, no one can help you with that.
no, but you were there for him. You were there.
Yes, yes, yes.
And you
Certainly.
accompanied it, and that's called Yogdan. That's a very high level of charity. Punya, you know.
Yes, punya.
And so when you do that, it costs you. And so you are handling that.
Yes.
And
I'm trying to handle that.
yeah, you are. And it's something that's a test of your strength.
Really.
And I think that as you continue to meditate and take power, that power enables you to take that test of strength that is coming to you. And that also in turn reflects back to you and tells you what quality of person you are, which is very, very high quality. You know, like in the Christianity, the Jesus Christ got crucified, and the Christians say, well, he crucified because of us. You know,
He
so
took
it's
our pains.
that. Yeah.
Sometimes I compare my husband with Jesus. I told him also the way you had to suffer. I
Yeah.
think you took all our pains along with you. I
Yeah.
told him like that.
Wow. Yes. Yes. But you know,
Yes.
these are in terms of the high stage of a human experience, you know, to be able to just be there with somebody in their pain. There's nothing you can do except just be there and have that empathy and share that pain. And that is punya.
But it hurts, you know.
Yeah, but you could handle it and you are handling it. And that's very high quality.
Thank you for giving me the strength to go on.
Well, it shows something about you that is not ordinary, you know, really special.
Thank you. Well, it was a nice session. Thank you.
Yes, it was a nice session and I enjoyed it too.
Me too. Yes.
Introduction to Raj Yoga, Session 2, in the context of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.